set up a private security camera that pointed right to their mailbox, so they were getting threats in the mail as well. So if somebody came and dropped off a threat, they'd be able to catch it on camera. There was nothing on those videos noteworthy, so nothing caught on camera at all. Now on May 5th of 2009 at 6:43, Detective Barlow got a call from Chris. He was at the gym working out and had said that he had tried to contact his wife Sherry multiple times and that there were no response. So he gave a call to his neighbor, the police officer, and said, "Hey, can you do me a favor and just go do like a welfare check on my sons and my wife? I'm unable to get a hold of them and I'm a little bit concerned." So Officer Barlow agreed and walked into the home, where he then discovered a horrific scene. 11-year-old Garrett and 9-year-old Gavin were found in their beds, strangled to death. Then he discovered the body of 31-year-old Sherry, who was also dead from strangulation. She also had a black eye and a few ligature marks to her neck, indicating she tried to fight off her attacker. Another thing that was extremely eerie and just gives you a sick feeling that was found in the home were messages written all over the walls in the home in red paint. Threatening messages just like the ones Chris had been receiving through the emails and mail. One of them said, "You have paid," quote, "punished," unquote. "I am watching." When Chris arrived at his home to meet Detective Barlow, he was told of the news that his wife was murdered and that his sons were murdered, and he was acting extremely shady, was not reacting as a bend, like you just find out that both was with the boys, if, there was anything going on of significance or even not. They just wanted to gather as much information as they could to start building their case. During this time is when they quickly learned about Chris and Sherry's best friend Tara's affair, and quickly thereafter they brought Tara in for questioning. While Tara was in one room, they picked up Chris and put him in an opposite room and started interrogating the both of them. The scattered puzzle began to fit and make more sense the more Tara talked. They also took Chris's computer in for evidence and spent hours sifting through everything, through all the files, the hard drive. And in doing this, they were able to gather crucial evidence for the case. There were countless X-rated videos and photos of Chris and Tara, along with hundreds and hundreds of sexual messages. He also kept a very detailed log of different things that Tara liked, her favorite things, what they wanted to name their kids, fights that they've had, different, just very strange things in this log. And the police said that it made him appear like a deranged stalker. But the most crucial evidence of all was a documentary quote, "The day that you changed my life, 11/5/2008, end quote. That date is actually when the threats that were made to Chris via email started. The two planned that day to make their relationship permanent and no longer a affair. So Tara and Chris sat down. They're like, listen, I don't want this to be just like a rendezvous sex thing. I want to really be with you. And that's when the threat started. That's when Chris started to premeditate murdering his two sons and wife. So even though Tara wasn't involved in the killings, she did and was putting the pressure on Chris to get a divorce and telling him, you know what, you leave your family. If not, you can't be with me and this has to end. But she couldn't be charged with anything because she wasn't involved in the physical murder or the planning of the murder. She had no knowledge of it. But the information that she reported to police was very crucial and proved to be vital. When detectives went through Sherry's phone and sifted through the sent and received messages in her phone, some messages revealed that Chris wanted a divorce. Chris had told her in these text messages, quote, "You and the kids are ruining my career and holding me back," end quote. She began to message friends some frightening things soon after, such as, quote, "If I die, no, Chris did it," end quote. Another toxic relationship that the police were interested in Chris's life was that of Joyce. It brought many red flags to police. His relationship with Joyce and his job, his obsession, his power, and most importantly, his money. To him, Joyce and her missionary service was a complete scam. It bothered him that people who worked hard and made minimum wage and very little money were sending their hard-earned cash to someone who was extremely wealthy, flying around in private jets and jetting off to all these vacations, all while preaching. Chris just thought it was utter experts testify that Sherry and her boys died between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. when Chris was indeed home. Family members wept as they were shown images of the young boys dead in their beds. Swear words spray painted profoundly all over the walls and on the boys' covers matched their father's handwriting. So, not only did he spray paint the walls, he spray painted his son's covers on their beds and didn't even bother to try and change his handwriting. It's just so disgusting. Prosecutors explained that Chris would stop at absolutely nothing to save his high-profile job and to not mess things up with his mistress, Tara. All evidence of the affair was shown to the jury. Messages, tapes, photos, and on top of that, Tara testified that Chris promised to be divorced by the end of that month. Tara also, when she was up there testifying, stated that Chris promised on the day that he killed his little boys and his wife, he promised that he would be serving her with divorce papers that day. The prosecution said, quote, "He felt his own children die in his own bare hands," end quote. This man is a liar and doesn't value life in any way. He's pure evil. The jury deliberated for days and was having a hard time coming to a verdict, but they went through all of the evidence again and really was, sifting through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And while doing that, a photo of him and Tara kissing from October 2008 showed up, and the date was proven because it was written on the back. Like back in the day when you would take photos and have them developed, you would write on the back of them like who's in the photo and what the date was, and that's what they had done, and it was written October 8, 2008. Chris on the stand had lied and said that their relationship didn't start until November 2008, which couldn't be since this photo contradicted and said otherwise. They were quickly able to come to a conclusion after that if he lied about this, what else was he lying about? He was found guilty on all 3 counts and sentenced to 3 life sentences. All his appeals were denied, but in March of 2019, a judge granted Chris a chance at a new trial on the grounds of ineffective counsel. A new trial has not yet begun. So that is the very sad case of the Coleman family. I found it interesting that it was so similar to the Chris Watts case, but it's not as widely talked about as that case. I was shocked that I hadn't heard of this case prior, and I thought it was important to talk about because those little boys' lives mattered. Sherry's life mattered. It's just so very, very sad. I'm glad that he's paying for his crimes. As for Tara, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you for hanging out with me and listening to this case. If you want more true crime, I would appreciate if you liked,